challenges and unlock new opportunities. Agri-tech is boosting farm yields, health tech and telemedicine are connecting patients to doctors, and IoT is making cities and industries smarter. As these trends accelerate, it's vital to explore how businesses and entrepreneurs can harness them to drive sustainable growth and keep Africa globally competitive. Of course, we explore the subject in detail here on The Mint with an expert here in studio. Now, The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now we take a look at our main story in detail. Now, around the world as well as here in Africa, emerging technologies like solar power, blockchain, fintech, agri-tech and smart infrastructure are transforming how we live, work and do business. They're tackling challenges in energy, farming, healthcare and finance while opening new doors for innovation and growth. Today we explore how these trends can power Africa's future and keep us competitive on the global stage. Now, to help me unpack this subject, I'm joined by Niklaus Chirume, a regular contributor to The Mint and of course a tech expert. Nick, hello and welcome to The Mint.
Eben, Mr. Moneyman, thank you for having me.
Fantastic, always a pleasure having you in conversation. Now, to get the ball rolling, how is the adoption of renewable energy, particularly solar, transforming the energy landscape on the continent as well as the way that we access power?
Well, I think the first thing I can really be excited about is the economic impact. Even we've gone to a set that global warming has gone to a really bad stage and we might need to find some really green energy to use. So solar energy that's recyclable and it doesn't have any impact on the economy and the environment as we see it. And then there's also the business and household transformation. The decentralized solar energy means that we don't have to rely on our power lines as a country as a whole, and that kind of reduces the stress and also allows us to be able to maintain our power lines for those who actually need let's say the power lines from, let's say, Kariba or Wange, instead of just the entire nation relying from those two outlets only.
Right. You mentioned, of course, the aspect of Wange and Kariba. You look at the Zimbabwean landscape, 2/3 of the power is coming from Wange and a third is, of course, coming from Kariba. Independent power producers are making up less than 10% of that particular contribution. Let's move on to the next question. What are the biggest barriers to scaling solar technology locally, and how can these be overcome perhaps through innovation as well as policy?
All right, I think with looking at the biggest barriers in solar technologies, that one of them is actually one of the major barriers and the other one is actually more on its way on being solved right now. So the first major one would be the upfront very high cost that comes with implementing some of these systems. Let's say if you're a large company per se and you want a system that's able to power up your entire company and then maybe some of your production, that might be especially costly if you need something like a 5 kV or a 10 kV. And then the second barrier would have been human resources. Until recently, we did not have, I would like to say, the people who could maintain some of these solar panels or upgrade them or actually create our own. But as the country was moving towards more of the solar line, we now have innovators who are actually dabbling into studying some of this, and maybe we would even see ourselves creating our own without needing to import a large scale of solar equipment.
Absolutely. Getting to manufacture them here in Africa, here in Zimbabwe, would prove to be an absolute game changer. Now, moving on to another subject, how is blockchain technology reshaping financial services, and what practical use cases are we seeing perhaps beyond cryptocurrency?
Well, beyond cryptocurrency, we are looking at the fact that of decentralized servers. So in the financial sector, how it usually works, or in fact, in any IT sector, how it usually works is that you store information on a server. And what the problem with that was, when that server is hacked, or maybe it was going through a DDoS attack, you would have a system that's down for everyone else. But with blockchain and the decentralized server that's going on, is that it's being stored on multiple sections of the system. So basically, even if this one is attacked, we would still have other ones that are still up. And even if this one is down or anything happens to it, it would still cross-check with the multiple nodes that are within the system.
Right. With fintech innovations on the rise, how do you see digital payment systems evolving perhaps in the next 5-10 years?
Well, right now with what's happening with cryptocurrency is that it's more, or blockchain, it's more or less involved with cryptocurrency mainly, and that's what you can see on mobile. But we're looking at, let's say, platforms like EcoCash, ZimSwitch being actually able to incorporate some of these technologies within their mobile payment.
Fintech.
Yes, within the fintech systems. And then we also see some regulatory needs that might come into place, because the thing is with blockchain is that it's so decentralized that almost anyone can get into it. Like right now, you can start with blockchain. The reason why Bitcoin is not being able to be traced, like let's say who you sent it from, who you're receiving it from, is how decentralized it is. So we might need regulatory needs to manage this, otherwise we might have problems in the future.
Right. How can perhaps some of these new forms of payments perhaps be regulated? Because as you mentioned, with blockchain, there are issues around, it being very cryptic, and traceability, continuity, sustainability.
Well, I think the entire existence of blockchain is based on its anonymity in that sense, such that what your payments cannot be traced. And if we try to make them in a sense that someone is overlooking that information, then we're going to have a situation such that we're returning back to the centralized system, such that if that person or whatever is monitoring the blockchain is compromised, then we have a situation such that the entire network is compromised. The beauty of it is that not only does it check itself, but it also it's made in a way that it keeps itself, I would like to say, up to tally. Even if you were to get hacked and then you were to say, okay, fine, I lost 500, it would check with the other nodes and then return that kind of money to you. Now, another problem that arises is that it's now a form of a self-currency which would not be governed over, and that's one thing that we might need to look out for in the future.
It seems that Donald Trump is trying to move one or two notions that advance the use of blockchain. At the same time, we're also seeing global players, be they venture capital funds as well as other reputable investment organizations such as BlackRock, that are now getting into investment where blockchain is concerned. Why is that important, and what does that mean for blockchain?
All right, so I think until recently, blockchain has only been known to be a fintech or in a financial world but it actually broadens out. We can look at the issue of the voting system. If we have an online voting system, we are storing votes on a server, correct?
Right.
If we were to manipulate that server in any way, then now we have compromised votes. But if we were to use blockchain and we decentralize those votes, it will be in a way to keep itself in check. That's making it a bit more secure. We also have supply chain management. Like I said, right now how it works, we have a server that stores information, but with supply chain management, we can actually track, let's say if you're delivering foods from China to here, where they are, if they're here, until they reach here, without any compromisation that might happen on that server.
All right. Now let's move on to another subject that has to do with, of course, agri-tech and food security on the continent. How is technology driving efficiency and productivity in agriculture, perhaps through precision farming?
So if we're looking at precision farming, Eben, we're going to look at three topics. There is drones, there's IoT sensors, and then there's also data platforms. So those are the main three elements that have driven precision farming. So if we're looking at drones, we have situations such that there is now crop monitoring using drones. So we just fly over our crops. Let's say we have large acres of land that covers maize, and then let's say we want to spray or want to apply some pesticides. We can actually fly some drones on top and then just spray the area that we want. It's different from back then. We actually had to use a bit more machinery to be able to accomplish that, a bit more labor. And then we can also look at the IoT sensors. So with the introduction of IoT, we can look at things like smart greenhouse technology. So now we have fully automated greenhouses that are being applied across some of the countries. Even in Zimbabwe, we've seen this being done. In Nigeria, with companies such as Hello Tractor, and then in Kenya, with countries such as Farm Inc. that are also applying some of this information. So with smart greenhouses, what they're doing is that you have a greenhouse, and then you are monitoring the conditions that are inside as pertaining to the crop, that the plant that you're growing. Let's say if it's tomatoes, you want to keep the humidity at such a level, the temperature at such a level, and then it will be giving you live updates on maybe your phone or your tablet or something.
Right. How do you see data and IoT integration improving food security on the continent?
So with data and IoT, we're looking at the sense that we have food storage problems right now with, let's say we have large silos, right? And we store our grain in there, but we cannot monitor, let's say, the conditions that are within that silo. This has led to us actually losing a percentage of what we've actually stored. But with IoT now, what we can do is that we have these silos and they are monitored and they're giving information feedback to the outside world, such that we can actually improve the percentage of the yield that we're then getting out of the storage itself.
Right. Time for us to take a breather. When we come back, we look at the African tech, of course, landscape, as well as just how technology is transforming the world of health. The Minty Broadback, don't go anywhere.
Pardon?
Look up.
Whoa!
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Ollie J, your host and captain for this technological voyage.
They say that curiosity killed the cat. Well, we say curiosity makes you swipe.
Okay, there's a real big one. Oh, okay.
Okay, take the elevator.
Okay,
Where they
that
going?
one
Look
came
up,
out of
Look
the-
up.
From some tech-tastic adventures to some out-of-this-world Zimbabwean inventions to the scientifically mind-boggling, we show it all.
What we're looking at is two charging ports to charge the vehicle.
And things get electric. Catch Swipe right here on ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294.
Didn't graduate. I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoilt.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
That guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
Harare. Tune into the beat.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, your source for news, business, sports, fashion, and more.
Experience the pulse of Harare's culture and lifestyle.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, Harare's top radio station.
Join the conversation with Zimbabwe's top personalities.
Subscribe now for fresh and infotainment content daily.
Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's heartbeat.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play. The one story where you can't get out of your head.
Wakatarisa munhu so Erika like where you're sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako iyo afro chakuti ndo music manje no yeMzimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so Shona kana kuti Chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe. Ndiwo rupawo rwako. Ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
You are watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. We continue our conversation on Africa's emerging technologies and also the aspect of how global innovations have a trickle-down effect on Africa and, of course, here in Zimbabwe. And I continue the discussion with Nicholas Chirume, a regular contributor to The Mint as well as a tech expert. Now, Nick, picking up from where we left off, what is your assessment of the Zimbabwean startup ecosystem?
All right. So I would like to say that is quite a good solution and quite a big push to innovation. But we do have a couple of issues that would arise, actually arising with the Zimbabwean startup system. The first one would be lack of funding. So we have a lot of people out there who have great innovations, great ideas, but due to the lack of funding, they're not actually able to implement them. And this is leading to them actually migrating to countries that are able to maybe access these funds and give them access to these funds. And then you'd find out that some of these great innovations are now being done in other countries. We have innovators that have moved to UK and actually been able to produce things that would have been very helpful if they had actually been done in Zimbabwe, right where we are. We also have idea theft. So this comes in the sense that when you're young and you're working on innovation, maybe you're 19, 20, you don't exactly know the right process maybe to bring out your idea, who to talk to,
patent, how to make sure that it's protected.
So with that, we have people who actually take advantage of such young innovators and say, oh, fine, maybe I'll produce it for you or I'll help you with this. And then they actually patent it for themselves. This is actually one of the largest problems that we're actually facing as young innovators in Zimbabwe.
Right. And of course, relevant to that would be the aspect of ensuring that the interests of young people are protected. You've got several organizations. You've got the title deeds, of course, of Zimbabwe, as well as ARIPO organizations that see to that ideas are protected. You've got a very interesting scenario where Maheo is produced in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, but it was sometime about 2 years back patented in Europe. But this is an African product that's been produced in Africa by our Magogos for the longest of period, and you're surprised to find that very same product being patented in Europe.
In Europe. I think, yeah, what we can also then look at is we also have very few advisors who can actually advise on this topic. We might need a bit more entrepreneurs coming into the light and giving some of these young entrepreneurs some advice on what they can exactly do, where they can go, where, because as you just see now, you are actually quite the resource for knowledge, but then you need to then give it to the young entrepreneurs, then they can come through and they give you these innovations that they have.
And that's why we're having, of course, this very conversation now. Moving on to another subject, Nick, what role is telemedicine playing in bridging healthcare gaps, especially in rural and underserved communities?
So telemedicine is actually quite the resource that has been untapped.
Just to come in there, maybe before you expand, what is telemedicine to start with?
So with telemedicine, basically, it's applying well, let's say the healthcare, but using IT or digital platform.
Right.
So an example would be, let's say,
yes.
She needs help. Maybe she wants to see the doctor, but she's in a very remote area, and the doctor they want to see is currently in Harare. Telemedicine would come into play such that we can have actually a video call of the doctor asking her, what are you feeling, that, and she describes it, and then he's actually able to give a prescription. Now we can even take it a step further. Let's have drone assistance now. Let's have a situation such that so we have the drone flying in and then dropping this
specific medicine
that they need. Maybe if we have, like, let's say it's an entire rural area, maybe it's a day we look at this and then we just drop a whole bunch and then we give it to them. That's what telemedicine would be.
Right. Still very much on that. How is the funding in terms of some of those concepts actually flowing? Are there any gaps that you feel could be plugged in that particular regard?
So yeah, with funding, I always feel like there are always gaps that can be plugged because the amount of innovation that is within Zimbabwe is quite vast, and we have we actually have organizations such as ZINCSA, such as the CSPC, that actually look into young entrepreneurs. They bring them in, and then they try to get funding for some of their projects. And these are things that us young entrepreneurs can then look into. But with funding, yes, it's always going to be something that is needed. Innovation takes a lot of funding.
Right. How is IoT transforming industries such as manufacturing, logistics, or urban planning locally?
Okay. So with IoT, I'm always going to go back to the part of optimization and increasing the efficiency. So, back in the day, we used to have, maybe if we are making a loaf of bread, you then bake it yourself. Maybe you try to do the whole process yourself. But now we actually have machines that just do the entire thing for you. Then all you have to do is set it to a certain degree. We also have sensors that are being implanted to monitor running equipment to see they're going beyond, let's say, the normal temperature or the recommended temperature. And then we can actually sort of optimize them, increasing maybe the lifespan of some of these machines that we are having running on the ground.
Right. Security also becomes very important. Week in, week out, we hear of robberies. You hear in one area $10,000 has disappeared. You listen in the next week, $20,000 has disappeared by means of robbery. You also hear of cyber attacks and phishing, and it's a whole mess that has also leveraged digital technologies. The big question is, how can these holes again be plugged?
So I think the main issue is, I would like to say technology is advanced. It has been very advanced, but then our people are still lagging behind. So education, I think maybe doing some sort of reach out to have the companies educate some of their employees on what are the basic practices. Because I can give you a basic example. Let's say if I were to say, fine, I'm sending you an email. I send you an email, but it's coming from info@ztn.co.zw, right? You're probably not going to see that because you're going to think, it's coming from ztn.co.zw. Fine. They're asking you, can you please click on this link?
And yet the difference there is the comma and not the dot.
And not the dot. And then they ask you to log in or click this link. But the moment you click that link, and then maybe it's just going to say, sorry, it didn't work out. Maybe go back and try again. But they've already logged in some of your details, your IP. They've logged in your location. They have a lot of this. So that's mainly technology on its own is secure. What's vulnerable is the humanity behind it. So what they're actually hacking into is the humans behind the computer, not the computer itself.
Right. And so in addition to the education, at what levels then could that be introduced? Because you spoke about just how important it is for, of course, entrepreneurs and business leaders to educate their employees. But think of it from an academic perspective. How can the graduates that are being churned out of our universities perhaps be educated in that regard?
So I think with the graduates that are being churned out of the universities, we can actually have more of a compulsory course that can be done that educates people on data policy. So we have what you need to do when handling people's data, what you don't do when you're handling people's data, things like that. I think when we were in varsity, we had basic English communication because they wanted us to be able to communicate. So if we have such a similar situation of that course being introduced, we have a bit more people who are ready to tackle some of the technological issues that we're facing.
But what are some practical examples of smart infrastructure projects that can address urban challenges like traffic, energy efficiency, or even waste management, as it were?
All right. So a couple of examples of what can address some of the urban challenges, let's say traffic. We've had situations, I think we've had situations where you'd find that with traffic lights, right? On the north side, there is a long line of traffic, but on the west side, we have nothing at all. But then the traffic light is red and then green this direction, and then these can't move. We can have traffic lights with sensors that are programmed to then sense the amount of traffic that is within within a lane, and then change accordingly or adapt accordingly to that. And these are some of the projects that are actually in the pipelines. I know a couple of entrepreneurs that have actually worked on them and are actually seeing that these can work, but in theory. So if these can be funded and then provided out there, we have actually a problem that we've put a solution to.
Right, if I'm getting it right, you're saying, suppose it's a traffic jam and it's early morning. So perhaps the idea would be to program the traffic lights so that they allow more of the inflow of traffic into the CBD, rather than have them on a 50-50 scenario between the red and the green. Am I getting you correct?
That is true. That is true.
All right, and vice versa, obviously, when it's a traffic jam and vehicles are moving out of the city.
Vehicles are moving out of the city. There are actually some applications. They might not be as accurate, but then I actually have one that kind of just tries to analyze traffic depending on the road. So if it's 5 p.m. it will give you, okay, fine, the best road to use to get where you want to go is this way, this way, this way, this way. Now, I'm not speaking on how accurate these can be, but they can actually help a bit in reducing traffic jam, because some people who are actually driving only know one road to get to a place, and that increases the traffic on its own.
Right, I can't wait for us to finish the conversation so that I can get access to that very application and get to be smart around how I navigate traffic in Zimbabwe. Now, as we get ready to a roundup, how can businesses and entrepreneurs tap into these emerging technologies to create scalable, sustainable solutions for local challenges?
All right, so with businesses, right, we have what we like, we already addressed it with the idea of startup startup infrastructure and a startup community. So we would find that some of these entrepreneurs, what they actually need is just a place where they can be. It's a large room where there's a large room they can actually go in and just incubators and just think about some of these ideas and implement them. So we have that. We also have ideas behind businesses engaging universities, because we have universities where students actually can't find attachment and they have to look for them on their own. But why not engage them and go like, we're now working with you, right? If we like certain projects, we're going to take maybe a group of students, and then they're going to come work with us. Okay. That way you have entrepreneurs that are ready to work for you, and they also have places to go, and we don't have people who are failing to find attachment.
Right. Looking at just how the academic structure here in Zimbabwe is framed, and you juxtapose that to how other advanced economies are going about their education, are there any elements that you would feel we need to scale up, and perhaps any recommendations that could be of use, very briefly?
Well, yeah, I would actually recommend some of the digital innovations that are coming into play. We have things like VR, where maybe students want to learn about the Great Wall of China, but actually can't go to see the Great Wall of China. Okay. VR can bring the Great Wall of China to them. This is a more engaging way for a form of learning that actually can drive our pass rates even higher, because students are excited to be part of such things.
Nicholas Chirume, a tech expert and a regular contributor here on The Mint. Nink, thank you for appearing on The Mint.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, Eben.
Fantastic. Well, of course, that's a wrap on The Mint today. Do follow us on our social media handles at Zim Papers TV Network, as well as at ZTN Prime. Your views and your thoughts are important to us. Remember to catch us every weekday at 2 p.m. Central African Time for the juiciest business stories in Zimbabwe, on the continent, as well as beyond. I'm Eben Mabunda, the Money Man. Let them do what they do, where they do what they do. But we do what we do. We mean business. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.
They call me Racer X, or in this case,